I'm Geetha from PG Department of Computer Science, belongs to A.D.M College for Women, Nagapattinam. Let's discuss about the topic display device. Introduction. What is display device? Display device is an output device used to represent the information in the form of images. Display system are mostly called a video monitor or video display unit. Display device are designed to model, display, view or display information. What is CRT? CRT stands for cathode ray tube. CRT is a technology used in traditional computer monitors and televisions. The image on CRT display is created by firing electrons from the back of the tube of phosphorus located towards the front of the screen. Once the electron hits the phosphorus, they light up and they are projected on a screen. The color we view on the screen is produced by the blend of red, blue and green light. A beam of electrons emitted by an electron gun passes through focusing and deflection system that direct the beam toward specified positions on the phosphor coated screen. The phosphor then emits a small spot of light at each position conducted by the electron beam because the light emitted by the phosphor fades very rapidly. Some method is needed for maintaining the screen picture. Refresh CRT. One way to keep the phosphor glowing is to redraw the picture repeatedly by quickly directing the electron beam back over the same point. This type of display is called a refresh CRT. Diagram of CRT is displayed for your reference. In this diagram, we can see the connector pins, base, electron gun, focusing system, control grid voltage, X deflection and Y deflection towards the phosphor. Components of CRT. What are the main components of CRT? Number 1, electron gun. Electron gun consisting of a series of elements, primarily a heating element and a cathode. The electron gun creates a source of electrons which are focused into a narrow beam directed at the face of the CRT. Number 2, control electrode. It is used to turn the electron beam on and off. Number 3, focusing system. It is used to create a clear picture by focusing the electrons into a narrow beam. Electron gun with an accelerating anode diagram is displayed for your reference. In this we can see the heating element, cathode, control grid, focusing anode, accelerating anode, electron beam path. In a CRT, we have a heating filament which is responsible to heat up the cathode element of the CRT, that is what generate the electrons, or we can say when heating element heat up the cathode electrons, simply boil off from the cathode, and these electrons are guided by the set of device which was cylindrical in nature and helps the electron beam to reach to the screen. Emitted electron beam must have the following properties. It must be accurately focused so that it produces the sharp spot of light where it strikes the phosphor. It must have high velocity since brightness depends on the velocity of the beam. It has 3 functions. Number 1, control grid. Number 2, focusing anode. Number 3, accelerating anode. What does control grid do? When we observe a picture on screen, in some parts of the picture may be bright or some picture may be dark. This brightness or darkness is the elimination of intensity on the screen is basically controlled by the intensity of the beam which strikes the particular point on the screen. This intensity of the screen is controlled by controlling intensity of the electrons or electron beam coming out of the cathode. Electron beam coming out of the cathode is negatively charged. Control grid is also negatively charged. It is a high voltage applied to the control grid. If both are negatively charged, so they repel each other. The amount of voltage at the control grid will essentially allow a certain amount of electrons to pass through the control grid. So, we can say the number of electrons pass through the control grid is controlled by the voltage applied on the control grid. So, if we reduce the amount of voltage on the control grid, we will allow large number of electrons to pass through the control grid and the intensity of the beam will be higher. So, the illumination or intensity of the screen will also be higher. Electrostatic deflection of the electron beam in a CRT diagram is displayed for your reference. In this we can see the magnetic deflection coil, the phosphor coated string, the electron beam that are passed through the focusing system with the help of the electron gun, and the connector pins are used as the base. Focusing anode and accelerating anode. Focusing anode, it helps us to focus the electron beam on the particular location of the screen. Accelerating anode, it is required to strike the electron beam onto the screen with a very high speed or velocity to emit light. Till now, we have seen that the electron beam is going straight and will be able to hit the center of the screen. But the screen is the rectangular matrix. To create a picture, this beam should move all over the screen. So, we need horizontal deflection as well as the vertical deflection so that we can cover the entire screen. Magnetic deflection. This beam is deflected by magnetic deflection coil, which is available on top and bottom and also on the other side of the CRT. Magnetic deflection coils generate the magnetic field which deviate the electron beam. Properties of phosphor. Persistence. Persistence is defined as the time it takes emitted light from the screen to decay to 1/10 of its original intensity. Lower persistence phosphor require higher refresh rate to maintain a picture on the screen without flicker. It is useful for animation. Higher persistence phosphor is useful for displaying high complex and static pictures. Resolution. The maximum number of points that can be displayed without overlap on a CRT is referred to as resolution. Resolution of a CRT is dependent on the type of phosphor, the intensity to be displayed, and the focusing and the deflection system. High resolution system are often referred to as high definition system. Intensity distribution of CRT screen. Refresh rate of a CRT is the number of the time per second the image is redrawn. It is typically 60 per second for raster display. Refresh rate to avoid flickering is 60 Hz. A flicker-free picture appears constant or steady to the viewer. Reducing the refresh rate increases flicker. As the refresh rate decreases, flicker develops because the eye can no longer integrate the individual light impulses coming from a pixel. Aspect ratio. Another property of video monitor is aspect ratio. This number gives the ratio of vertical points to horizontal points necessary to produce equal length lines in both directions on the screen. Raster scan display. Raster can be explained as a rectangular collection of dots or points plotted. An image is subdivided into various horizontal lines which are referred to as scan lines, which are then further divided into different pixels, which helps in the processing of an image. Basic working of raster scan. In the system, a beam of electrons is moved across the screen. It moves from top to bottom, considering one row at a time. As the beam of electron moves through each row, its intensity is alternatively turned on and off, which helps to create a pattern of spots that are illuminated. When each scan of the line is refreshed, it returns to the left side of the screen. This motion is known as horizontal retrace. As a particular frame ends, the beam of electron moves to the top left corner of the screen to move to another frame. This motion is referred to as vertical retrace. This picture is then stored in an area of memory which is referred to as the frame buffer or refresh buffer. The buffer in a raster scan is that area that is responsible for containing intensity of the various points on the screen. The values stored in a buffer are then fetched and traced over scan lines one by one on the screen. The image formed through this raster scan is known as raster image. The quality of this image is determined by the number of pixels, which is termed as the resolution of the image. The amount of information each pixel represents is known as the color depth of the image. The raster graphic system of high quality contains 24 bits per pixel in a frame buffer. This is referred to as full color or true color system. Refreshing of raster scan display is carried out at the rate of 60 to 800 frames per second. Interlacing. A TV video signal is graphically interlaced, which means every full screen of information is made up of two separate fields, which include the odd field and the even field. First, the odd lines are printed on the graphic screen, then the even lines are printed in between the odd lines before the odd lines fade away. This all happens faster than any human eye can perceive. Random scan display. In random scan display, a beam of electron is directed only to the screen area where any picture has to be displayed or drawn on the screen. It is also termed as vector display, as it display or draw a picture in the form of one line at a time. It can draw and refresh lines on the screen of a picture in any sequence, not particularly specific. Basic working of random scan display. Random scan monitor are used to draw a picture in one line at a time, and or this are also referred to as vector display. The cathode ray tube, when operates as a random scan display device, direct the beam of an electron only to those areas of the screen where display or a picture has to be drawn. To draw a picture or to display it on the screen, the system goes through a line or set of commands and draws each of them one at a time in a line, turn by turn. The refresh rate here depends on the number of the lines that are to be displayed on the screen and are designed so that they draw the component line of the picture 30 to 60 times in a second. They have high resolution of pictures and produce smooth line drawing. It is that smooth that while zooming also it doesn't spread.